We take you straight to the southern French city of Nice, where commemorations are underway, marking the 5th anniversary of a jihadist attack, which resulted in the deaths of 86 people. Well, that attack happened as people lined the streets of the Promenade des Anglais to watch the fireworks display for the French National Day. Well, a 31-year-old Tunisian then drove a truck into the assembled crowds. He was shot dead by the police at the scene. Well, the victims included people of 19 different nationalities, as well as 12 children. Well, the French Prime Minister Jean Castex is there in Nice. He's currently speaking, and he is taking part, as I said, at that memorial for the victims. Well, during the ceremony, we expect 86 doves to be released as a sign of peace. Then later in the evening, there's going to be a concert which will begin at 10:34 p.m., which was the exact time of the start of the attack. And 86 beams of light will then be shone into the sky to honour each of the people that lost their lives. It will take you straight back to Nice when the Prime Minister has finished speaking. There will be the French national anthem. But first, we can speak to consultant psychologist Dr. Heather Sequeira, who joins us from London. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Sequeira. You're a specialist in trauma, and I'd like to draw on your experience because it's been 5 years since that horrific attack in Nice. How important is it that a commemoration like today's is held in helping people, perhaps grieving relatives or survivors, to come to terms with what they've been through?
Absolutely. It's vitally important. It's vitally important that a nation commemorates and honours the tragedy and the losses that people have sustained, because it offers people a kind of sense of space, of being held, in which they can process that trauma and grieve in the way that they need to. It's really important that we process trauma in that way. It needs to be marked.
Yeah, and the fact that the whole of France is very much with the people of Nice on this very sad anniversary, that's going to offer reassurance to relatives and survivors that they haven't been forgotten.
That's vitally important. And again, it's pushing back against that tendency that we all have as humans to kind of deny pain or to deny trauma. It's kind of like the elephant in the room. It's a thing that we don't want to see, but we have to be able to see it. We have to speak to it. We have to honour the losses that people have sustained. Absolutely.
Yeah, and you talked about sort of helping people come to terms with what's happened and closure. I mean, I'm just wondering how important is something like, for example, the ongoing legal process, bringing those responsible to justice, the accomplices of the attacker and so on. Is that an important part of it as well?
It's very important because people need to have a sense that justice has been done, absolutely. But at the same time, the prolonged nature of it is going to be keeping those trauma memories alive, and that's going to have another difficulty for people. So it's going to be a double-edged sword. It's going to be a good thing when we get there, but in the process of getting there, it can be really hard for people because they don't get that closure right until the end. So that's a difficulty.
Indeed, and that process is taking a long time. We're 5 years on, and it still hasn't reached a conclusion. Tell us a little bit more, Dr. Sequeira, about the protocol for treating people who've been through this kind of a trauma. How do you help them?
Well, I think it's really important to remember that there are as many reactions to trauma or this, an attack, tragedy like this, as there are people. For some people, it could be that they have panic or anxiety attacks and they're very on edge all the time. They feel they can't relax. For other people, it might be almost the opposite. They just feel very numb and cut off, even cut off from the very people that they love. And for other people, they might just have this sense that they are reliving this trauma day on day on day, or that they fear that it's just going to happen again. And that might be really disabling for them in their life. So the kind of therapy that people will be suitable for individuals will differ depending on what the problems they've got. But I could say in general, it's going to be helping people reclaim the lives that they want, or a version of the life that they feel is worth living.
So is it helpful for people in that situation to keep the conversation alive, to talk about it, to keep those issues out in the open, or perhaps they don't want to be reminded of it every single day and to move on?
Yeah, it's going to be a mixture of both. Yeah, so absolutely, you're right. They don't want to be reminded of it day on day. But again, they have to be able to feel that they can speak about it when they need to, or on occasions like this, that the nation holds them to do the grieving or do the kind of rituals that they need to do to process that trauma. And again, that will be very individualized. For some people, it might be a very formal thing they go through, such as the doves. For other people, it might be just doing something very personal, lighting a candle to the person they've lost, or other things that people do in their own cultures that are equally valid.
And just lastly, I mean, there are some forgotten, perhaps not much talked about victims in all of this, which were, of course, people like first responders who must live with what they saw, which can, just the imagination, one assumes was absolutely dreadful.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're as human as the rest of us are. And what helps them often is being acknowledged and being validated. And again, being seen for the work they do, that vital work they do. So acknowledging them today is going to be really, really important for them.
OK, well, thank you so much for speaking to us. Consultant psychologist